This video is supported in part by Retro Days, a place for nostalgia nerds to gather, share memories, chat, and engage. Go to retrodays.com or check their YouTube channel linked below. Yars Revenge is among the favorite games for the original Atari 2600, but there's so much more to this title than meets the eye. We're gonna run down 10 things you probably didn't know about Yars Revenge right now.
Don't you know that you're a grown-up? No games, no puns. Not allowed if you're a grown-up.
Hey there, and welcome back to GenXGrownUp. I'm John. I'm a GenXGrownUp, and I want to thank you for checking out this video. Whether you discovered Yars Revenge originally in the 70s and 80s playing on the TV in the family room, or you're a newcomer, you probably know the legacy of just how great this original Atari 2600 game was. We've covered a lot of stuff, both Yars Revenge and generally Atari 2600. I'll throw a playlist up in the corner there if you want to check out everything we've done about this amazing original console. Yars Revenge was programmed by the legendary Howard Scott Warshaw and released for the Atari in May of 1982. Now, odds are you've heard of this game, or if you're watching this channel or video, you've probably played this game, but knowing the game only scratches the surface of what there is to know. Like what? I'm glad you asked. I'm going to run down 10 things you probably didn't know about Yars Revenge, and we're going to start right now. And number one is, Yars Revenge started life as a port of Star Castle. If you're an arcade hound like many of us are living in the Generation X era, you probably remember Star Castle. Howard Scott Warshaw was assigned to write a port of the arcade game for the Atari 2600. However, after he saw the hardware was too limited, he took the basic building blocks of Star Castle and started to change the game elements to better fit the 2600's capabilities. In hindsight, it's pretty easy to see how this started as Star Castle. It has all the same components. Look, you've got a single central enemy hiding behind a shield that you can chip away at, small roving enemies that follow you around the screen, and a periodic, fast swirling ball attack from the main bad guy. And on to number two, did you know the title for Yars Revenge was almost Time Freeze? Once Warshaw was down the path of creating Yars Revenge, he was very keen on creating a game where, when you destroy the main antagonist, the screen freezes, and then what would be the first full-screen animated explosion takes its place. You've seen this Yars Revenge explosion over and over again if you played the game. And you want to be sure to stick around until the end of this video, because my number 10 item reveals some hidden meaning behind that signature Yars Revenge explosion. At number 3, you may be surprised to hear that Yars Revenge is only the 13th best-selling Atari 2600 title. Despite the place that Yars holds in the hearts and minds of the Atari faithful, Yars Revenge wasn't even a hit in its own day. It had mediocre reviews citing the repetitive nature of the game, and one review went so far as to call it a video sleeping pill. That resulted in good but not great sales for Yars Revenge. It ultimately sold upwards of 1 million copies, which is nothing to sneeze at, but that's behind duds like Pac-Man, E.T., and the Activision Frogger knockoff, Freeway. And to number 4, did you know Yars initially shipped with an original comic book? Now, while this is not unique to Yars Revenge, there were only a handful of Atari releases that did ship with original comics. The custom mini-comic packed in with Yars Revenge was called The Kotile Ultimatum, and it explains the story of Yars Revenge, the origin of the Yars, and what they're revenging against. All of that is contained here in the comic book. This is not to be confused with the instructions. There were 2 inserts with Yars Revenge, so if you're looking to pick up a complete in-box copy, be sure you look for that comic book, because without it, it's just not complete. And number 5, you may already know that Yars Revenge has an Easter egg, but you might not know that it holds special meaning and hints at lore behind the game. Warshaw is on record as saying that he likes secret meaning and hidden ideas in games, and this Easter egg certainly falls in that category. Now first, to get the Easter egg, you must destroy the enemy Kotile while it's in flight as the swirl. Then watch for this vertical black stripe on the explosion screen and position your Yar right on top of it. If you do it right, HSWWSH appears instead of the score screen. Now, with no internet, how did we find this growing up? Well, there's actually a clue for finding the egg cleverly hidden in the instruction manual's helpful hints section. You can see it says, "Watch out for the mean streak," referring to that black streak in the explosion. And as for Howard Warshaw's initials being forwards and backwards in the Easter egg, well, that leads us right to Number 6, the Easter egg hint pays off if you know your Atari history. Those forwards-backwards initials in that Easter egg are Howard Scott Warshaw's way of hinting that you should look for things forward and backward to understand further hidden meaning in the game. You see, in 1982, Atari had just suffered the loss of 4 key developers. David Crane, along with Larry Kaplan, Alan Miller, and Bob Whitehead, defected over royalty payment disputes and formed Activision. Well, the CEO of Atari in 1982, and the man with whom those devs had their disagreement, was Ray Kassar. This was very much on the mind of everyone working at Atari during this time, especially Warshaw. He derived the name for the protagonist, the Yar, by reversing Kassar's first name, Ray. And as documented in the comic, the Yars call the Razak system their home, and Razak is Kassar's last name in reverse, but with a bit of creative license. This was done partially as a jab at Kassar, who had little tolerance for this sort of cuteness in his developers, but publicly it was said that Yars Revenge is so named because it was to be Ray Kassar's revenge on the developers who left to form Activision. And to number 7, did you know that Yars Revenge is featured in a Hollywood movie? Sort of. Right near the beginning of Airplane 2, there's a young boy in the control tower, and he's fiddling with controls at an unattended console. Now, while Yars Revenge is not in view, the unmistakable sounds of Yars Revenge can be heard representing computer game noises as he messes around. On to number 8, Yars spawned not 1 but 2 Kid Stuff records. The Kid Stuff record label, known for releasing hundreds of children's albums based on popular kid-friendly IPs, released 2 albums centered around Yars Revenge. One contains a theme song and a radio drama-style reading of an expansion of the story in the comic book.
Before we were able to perfect the canon, we were attacked by the evil Quotile.
And the other is a 7-inch book and record set that explains the tragedy of Razak IV and follows the adventure of a young Yar warrior learning how to battle the Quotile.
This is your Atari Yars Revenge read-along book. Every time you hear this sound, it means it's time to turn the page.
To number 9, did you know there is an Atari authorized sequel for the Atari 2600? There have been several attempts to modernize and update Yars Revenge for current platforms, but there was never originally a sequel on the Atari. However, there was a homebrew, fan-created sequel called Yars Return that was created by Raymond Young and Dennis Dubrow in the early 2000s. That could just be the end of the story, but Atari liked their work so much that they adopted the title as a legitimate Atari 2600 sequel to Yars Revenge and started releasing it on those hook-it-up-to-your-TV flashback units. As you can see, Return basically reorganizes the key components of Yars Revenge by putting the Quotile in the middle, doubling up on the shields, making the neutral zone spread all the way around the screen, and doubling up on the number of bullets that chase your little Yar around. It's not an awesome game to play, but if you're a Yars Revenge fan, you should at least give it a try. Hey, we're nearly done, just one more to go. Before we do, if you've enjoyed the video so far and this is your first time watching GenXGrownUp, maybe consider looking for that little bar that lifts, click that subscribe button in the corner, maybe click that bell to enable notifications, making it way easier for you to find more Gen X inspired videos just like this one. We would sure appreciate it. All right, I promised number 10 was going to be all about that explosion, and here we go. And sure enough, number 10, there's meaning in the Yars Revenge explosion. Now, you'll remember way back at the beginning, we talked about when the game was initially called Time Freeze, it was because Warshaw wanted to have this full-screen animated explosion when you destroyed the Quotile. Well, it turns out that an Atari cartridge just doesn't have the storage for that sort of thing. But being an ingenious programmer, Warshaw leaned into that limitation. Rather than try to simulate the sort of pattern needed for the explosion from scratch, instead, he used the very game code itself. The explosion is a visual representation of the Yars Revenge source code, loaded, transformed, and displayed on the screen, and just added some sounds to accompany it. So when you destroy that Quotile, you're seeing more than an explosion, you're seeing that graphical representation of the Yars Revenge source code flashed right before your very eyes. Hey, if none of these were new to you, then congratulations, you're already a Yars Revenge expert. What did you think? Were there others that I missed? Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear from you. I really hope you found something to enjoy in this video, and I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye. Hey, you made it to the end. If you liked this video, the best way to say thanks is to watch one more. here are a couple suggestions that you just might enjoy. And if you love our content, maybe consider becoming a Patreon supporter by following the link on screen.
Unacceptable for grown-ups. Your dinner cannot just be French fries.